Hey y'all, it's your captain for all things creative, Shantae, coming at you with another fireside chat. This time we're talking about Wicked with my good friend from college, Mr. Ronald McCants. For those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. Please like, share, subscribe. And if you're returning, thank you so much for rocking with us because we are here for a treat. Finally talking about Wicked. And y'all already know me. So let's let Ronald introduce himself. Go ahead. Tell the people who
So
you
my
are.
name is Ron, most like professionally. You know me as Ronald when I was Ronald. So it's so funny that you say that. But yeah, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. Yes, we went to Dartmouth. I majored in engineering sciences, but I had a parallel degree there in theater and film studies and that whole thing. And I worked in biotech. I worked on Wall Street, did a lot of different things before I went to graduate school in San Diego for playwriting. And then after that, I went up to Los Angeles, and I was in residence at a theater, and I chose to really pursue television. I had a couple pilots that were produced while I was in graduate school in 2008 and 9, but they were in children's television, and I wanted to obviously be in prime time and that type of entertainment. So it took a minute, but I got into the Disney ABC writing program and staffed on my first show. Speechless at ABC, went on to work on Falcon and Winter Soldier at Disney, Chicago Fire, NBC. Most recently, I developed Cross when I was the head of development at Blue Monday Productions. And I actually went on to that show. And yeah, like I was on for the first two seasons. And right now, I am doing a lot of development. I'm writing a movie, and I'm going around pitching shows. And yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much for joining because I definitely admired you since college. I remember I saw that play that you had done for your senior big project. And I remember you had quoted like the book of Ecclesiastes, and I was just like so impressed. I just always loved, the Bible and all that stuff, and just the way you incorporated spirituality with your art and your storytelling. I've been a fan for a long time. And then I did remember that I saw a post about Cross because of you, and that's why I watched the show. I watched the first season. I was like, yo, he's doing big things, man. I've been so proud
First
of
season,
you.
I
And
approve.
well, I only saw the first season because I got into, dissertation limbo. But thank God, finished the program, got my PhD, teaching now, all that. But I had to, slow down on the TV and the entertainment. But I still think entertainment is so important because it's a window into, what's going on in the state of humanity for me, and especially reality TV, anime for me, and movies definitely are ways that I think we can start very meaningful conversations, about how we're doing both personally and collectively. And I think Wicked, especially, is one of those films that will stand the test of time because it has a lot of important conversation starters that hopefully we can, get into. And for those of you who need kind of like a short intro into why I guess we picked Wicked. Um, to tell the truth, the whole truth, not the truth, we wanted to do Severance first,
You wanted to do
but
Severance,
Ronald's got
well,
to
I
catch
didn't
up.
have time.
Ronald's got to catch up. It's okay. It's okay. Um, so we're gonna do that. Hopefully, 2027. You know, give
Yes.
you time. We're very busy, but um Wicked is something that is very near and dear to my heart. I used to watch the musical kind of videos, and for me, my Glenda, my Elphaba are Kristen Chenoweth and Adina Menzel, right? So I was
Mhm.
into Wicked just from the musical, but then when the film came out, I've always been an Ariana Grande fan, we got to keep her in our prayers, with whatever's going on
What's going
with.
on? I didn't know. Okay.
Well, I don't think it's just her, but in Hollywood, I just feel like our celebrities are getting thinner and thinner, and I know we don't want to body shame or do too much, but I am concerned about like the health of celebrities, like the standards that
Oh, okay.
we
Yeah.
have to be skinny and all the Ozempic and all that. So yes, we're gonna keep her in our prayers. And Cynthia Riva as well. People I guess I've been seeing her in Dracula. I think that's what she's doing now. It's like a one woman play where she's like all of the parts and she's been filming it. But I saw her first in The Color Purple,
Oh, yeah.
and I definitely feel like I saw her in Harriet Tubman as well. She
Yeah.
was in that Harriet Tubman.
Yeah, she played Harriet.
Yeah. But I didn't recognize her because like the way they transformed her in Wicked was like really amazing. With that micro braid wig, I think that's the best braid wig I've seen, just
Mm.
hands down. And when it comes to the makeup, the way I guess they said they found some kind of eyeshadow that was like the base hue, and they used it instead of like some kind of like foundation or something. I was like, wow, how do you do a whole green bottle just off of eyeshadow? Like whoever is the makeup artist, they're genius. They transformed her so well. But those two characters really sold the movie for me,
Hmm.
especially part two, because part two is not as strong, I think, as part one, but still you could definitely feel the chemistry between those two. And just the characters alone, that's one thing that we'll definitely like talk about later. But let's start with just the concept and the premise of Wicked. How would you define or just explain what about the concept of the movie that sold you and made you be willing to just talk about it with me?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it always comes down to if a movie is entertaining, number one,
Mhm.
and then if it's about anything. A lot of things that
Mhm.
I watch aren't necessarily always about anything, and they're not asking any questions. And I think with Wicked, it's not something that I'm not the target audience or whatever, but I have children, and I actually ended up going to the theater with someone and watching it. I saw both versions in the theater, and I think one thing I will say, like I think they have a brilliant conceit, which is like I think the whole thing about the villain, and like kind of like an anti-hero story, because but the villain is not really bad, but I think the true premise of Wicked is really an exploration of how institutional power and how institutional power structures manufacture all these monsters, and they try to unite the
Mhm.
populace, people, through fear and propaganda. And I think in today's time, that is something for us to be mindful of, because we consume a lot of media, propaganda, we watch a lot of social media, and now with the advent of AI, and you don't know what's real and what's not. I think Wicked kind of speaks to what's happening today. I didn't get a chance to see the
Mhm.
musical. I read it when I was in graduate school, and I don't remember most of it, but I don't think it really dealt with the same types of things, if I remember correctly. But I think what I love about the movie is that even though it uh, was updated, adapted for our time, like it still was very entertaining. It had nice, like cool songs, memorable songs, but it was also about something.
Amen to that. And what you said about, the anti-hero or like, rehabbing villains is definitely one of the things that made it stand out, but also made it familiar, I think, for me, because at that time, and I think still it's been popularized to have these remakes that show a different perspective, right? And I think the industry, it bothers me when I kind of see kind of cash grab kind of remakes that really don't need to be done for a lot of reasons. Like for example, like how many times Ghostbusters was redone? Like, oh, let's do it with women. Like now let's do it with kids from Stranger Things. I'm just like, why? Where is the original, you know, screenplay? Like for example, Sinners. That was so amazing. Like I wish there were more original stories, being told.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the remakes, I don't mind the different perspective ones with it. Like Maleficent, like with Angelina Jolie, telling the side of the stepmother. But what were you gonna say? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to lose that thread that you said, which is, and we can go back to,
Mhm,
Maleficent and stuff. But like
mhm,
we're in our current time, we are allowing shareholders and the interests of those shareholders to dictate what's being made, and the people that are making the decision makers, the bank, the people making the money, the decisions, the studio, which is the bank, they want to mitigate risk. And they've taken things way too far, in my opinion. It's now
mhm,
like, does something have IP? Everything that must be done has to have IP or previously existed because it already has a built-in audience, and we're mitigating risk, which is stupid to me because I'm like, yes, this is Hollywood has commercialized, creativity, but it's creativity, and I didn't get into the game to be rewriting stuff that I don't care about. You know what I mean? I didn't get in.
Facts.
I don't mind doing it if I can do it, but they're not going to pick me. You know what I mean? Most likely. The other thing is, like, I have lots of different stories, and unless you have the capital or you've you have the credibility, like Ryan Coogler and those types, where they can say, you know what, I'm a director. I know I can command a certain level of the fandom, who are going to come watch my thing. Yeah, the studio will probably back that person. You know what I mean? But for the majority of us, we're like, the market doesn't allow for that. We're writers, we're directors of a different level, who, yes, we can be more talented, we can be less talented, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just that, there are very few people that can be at that level and still be able to do an original, right? And I think the last thing I'll say is, like, when we were growing up, we had even a market for romantic comedies. It wasn't that the romantic comedy or every movie needed to break even or make a profit, during its theatrical release, but because there are so many ways to sell and resell, it still allowed the market to exist and for us to be able to tell the
Mhm,
stories. So when we lost DVD sales, and now we're losing licensing, or we've lost it because all these companies are now internet companies, and everything that they release can be released internationally. So there's no reselling. People are making a lot less
mhm,
money. So the people like me who are like, what, I'm entrepreneurial, I'll make a short film, I'll make a movie or whatever,
mhm,
still aren't able to fully make a living and a profitable business in today's market like
mhm,
we could have 10, 15, 20 years ago. So we are in an existential crisis, I think. And I
mhm.
wanted to mention that, but don't want to take too much of the time. We could talk more about like this Maleficent and like all, like, looking at villains, and like certainly, like, I think, it's Disney did Maleficent, Universal
Mhm.
did Wicked, Disney did Cruella. There's been
Cruella, that was a good one.
a good
Yeah.
one. There's been a movement towards that. And I think it all started,
Mhm,
when people went and probably saw Wicked on Broadway. They're like, oh, this is interesting. But I trace it back to TV, um,
mhm.
and Breaking Bad.
Mm,
Walter White, and he proved that audiences that like had a massive appetite for this type of protagonist who was complex, who was like he was straight up villain, but like we got we liked him, you know what I mean? And so it's similar when you're talking about Maleficent, Cruella, and even the Joker. There's a market for it,
Mhm.
right? And I just wanted to bring that up because I think we're gonna get more like that now. It's like kind of like a genre, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Before it was like this new thing, but now it's kind of like, well, this is definitely a cornerstone. People really like this, as consumers and of I guess American consumers.
It's so true. And I'm glad that you brought up, Breaking Bad and the importance again of having characters that are complex, because when we miss nuance and we don't have opportunities, to talk about nuance, and we stick to dichotomies and black and white, this is how we are in the mess that we are in as a
Right.
country. Because you cannot have camps that just want to ignore how complex life is, so if you have complex characters you can talk through those types of things. But
Mm-hmm.
again, um because of maybe capitalism and all those forces that you talked about, people, I think, have less original and complex stories, that are being sold to them. And now, with the attack on DI and all those things, it's like black voices and writers and artists are being shoved out in like record number two. It's like getting a little bit harder and harder, to see the kind of stories I think that we need to see. But Wicked stood out, especially in this climate, again, because you have a story based on one, showing you nuance, showing you that regardless of what mainstream media, or propaganda is out there, at the end of the day, humans are human. We're flawed. We have reasons for everything that we do. And you have these two women who are the leads, right? One is a woman of color, if you're talking about, Elphaba and Cynthia Erivo, right? And then the other one, if you're talking about, Galinda, she's kind of representing the establishment, and, why you should question who are the supposed heroes, who are the supposed good guys, So I really liked the premise. I really liked, the idea of taking that story of the Wizard of Oz, right? And flipping it on its head and saying, do you really know the real story? Do you really know these people? And then fleshing out, their backstories, their characters, and their questionable choices and their good choices too. And of course, the music on top of it is just the icing on the cake, because I love musicals. Always have, always will. And the songs in particular, really helped tell the story in a more accessible way for people. But that brings me, to the characters. And one of the acting choices that I really did not like, particularly because of the singing, was Madame Morrible. Like the way she ruined some of those songs for me and some of those scenes because of like the lack of singing ability. Just it, maybe it was worse for me because I had seen the musical and I know what some of those songs are supposed to sound like with her in it. But that character, oh my gosh, if I could recast, if I had the power to go back in time, I
Now
would totally
you
recast her.
you
But
came
let's
from.
talk about characters. Yeah, what characters worked for you? What characters didn't?
You know,
Go.
I look at things. Usually only remember the things that worked. I didn't watch it, recently. So what I have in my mind are the things that really popped and stuck with
Mhm.
me. And generally, there's not when I'm watching something, I generally don't unless they really cause a visceral reaction in me. I don't dislike them. I'm always trying to find why do I like them? Why can I love them? That kind of thing. So that's the lens I look at it. The one character that really stood out for me that I think about is Elphaba, and it's
Mhm.
not because she's interesting or whatever. I think it's more about like I find her incredibly relatable to my own story, my own journey. I think it's the very real lived experience that I've had with my own isolation and feeling, okay, I grew up in a certain area, and not having the love that I wanted, or not having the affection I needed, or being the only one in a room, like a classroom that was black, and like it's hard for me to relate when they don't want me here. That's how I feel. Or where basically, like, wherever my presence is, it makes other people feel uncomfortable. You know what I mean? And that's something that I related to deeply. And it's not what you would probably normally think when you're watching Wicked, but that's how I was able to connect to the character. And I found it compelling because I'm like, yeah, like, I mean, I have green skin, but I've been in a place where I was not wanted. I've been in rooms where, because I literally writer's room, because of the way I work. I work very, very hard. I'm there at 6:30 in the morning. Our room starts at 10. That can, and I come in, I'm ready. I got my pictures, got da 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 da. That can be kind of scary to people, when just my presence, just the way I operate. You know what I mean? I'm not putting my judgment or saying you got to do like me or whatever, but they're doing that to me. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I just can't operate under that type of stress. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I think you become villainized, especially when you try to help people. And like, people think that you want something from them. You know what I mean? And I'm like, for me, like, in Alphabet, like, I know she's trying to help the animals, trying to protect them and stuff like that. And like, she's providing strategy, like, we gotta survive, da da da. She in the second movie, she's all off and by herself, and it's all scary, but she didn't have an ulterior motive, right? And like, if I can just go on, I just feel like was dope about her character is, like, it was a very existential journey that was, again, similar to mine, because even
Mhm.
through her suffering, whatever, she chose to do the right thing, and that internal truth became her compass. It wasn't, what, I want to be vindicated. What, like, I need to win because I'm right. Because people, or the people in her world pushed her out and villainized her, not only because of the way she looked, but because of the choices that she made, because she chose to do the
Mhm.
right thing, and this, that, and the other. She learn to do things from this internal truth place that I operate out of. Because look, I'm like, I think about it, and think about her character deeply. Probably because I was, thinking about I was like, well, what do I remember? But um, she, like me, you know what I mean. She was not only like trying to build bridges to her sister and build bridges to others, you know what I mean? She was generating good things in this world. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And she had a magic to her that people were envious of, but it, like, even through her suffering, I feel what was dope about the movie is that, again, she wasn't looking for external validation, but like the envy that others had, but she still was able to find love. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? It's like, I might be ugly, I might be green, I might be this, that, and the other to you, but somebody loves me. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And like, maybe that isolation was worth it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, like, she saved the day. You know what I mean? And what she gets in the end, the reward, like being able to, like, she makes the ultimate sacrifice, I think, of leaving that world, you know what I mean, and going forth to do something else with somebody that loves her, in an unknown world. I thought that was pretty poetic. I mean, it's unfortunate that she couldn't, that we have to believe that she's dead, but there was just a lot. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, no, she's one of my sheroes, I guess, in terms of, musicals, just for the notes that she hits along with, Defying Gravity, but because of all the things you said as well. And For me, I like her partnership with Dr. Dilliman, who's low-key the
That's
character
good.
I identified. Yes, played by Peter Dinklage, Tyrion from Game of Thrones and Thor
Very
fame
in.
as well. He was in Thor, right? As like the Forge guy, right?
I think he
Um,
won, yeah, he won that, not in the original, but yeah.
yes, so I love Peter Dinklage, period, from since when he was Tyrion. But even though you don't see him, his power shines through the voice acting and like Dr. Dilliman. I feel like he's my spirit animal in the movie because he's like this professor. He's in academia, like myself, right? And he's a culture keeper, which, as a Black woman, especially somebody who really knows the power of stories and storytelling, I love the fact that he stuck around even as he saw the university, kind of erasing the history of the animals. You saw how like they had like the murals of the other animals just covered up and they'd get uncovered sometimes. But during his classes he was still actively trying to show, the past when his species, had more rights and all of that. And has those secret meetings. I saw him as like the mini community organizer where he had like all his other animal professor friends telling each other the tea. Some of them being like, okay, with this information, I need to dip. So he's keeping people safe with the knowledge, but also passing it on to the students. And he sticks around to the end when they snatch him up. So Dr. Dilliman, I love him, but I don't know if I would stick around to the point of getting snatched up. That's the only,
That's right.
that's where he loses me a little bit. I was like, I feel more like the tiger in the movie. It's like, yeah, I'm leaving while I can still talk. That's more my wavelength, like to the T, but Dr. Dilma, he's very close, to like
Mhm.
my ideals with community organizing and storytelling, culture keeping, all of that. Um, but was there any character that you did not like? Because, like I said, Madame Morrible, that was a chop for me with the singing.
Not really. I mean, there,
Okay.
like, I feel like, there's definitely lessons to learn from the wizard. And I mean, I think
Mhm,
like we got to dig into the man behind the curtain.
mhm, mhm,
I thoroughly enjoyed that. And I knew from the get go, I was like, oh, he's gonna be the baddie. And it wasn't like I didn't like him, but and I guess when I say like, it's like relate. You know what I mean? And so
mhm,
I am a person that I don't find authority or manufactured authority, like people who are fake, I don't find them relatable. Um,
mhm,
I mean, I understand them, right? But the way I move, I'm like, no, like it's gotta be real shit. Like, and
mhm,
I think, he's a regular dude, right? And again, operating, he's the man behind the curtain. It's all smoke and mirrors. He has no real power, and he manipulates and he uses people, and that type of narcissism bothers me. You know what I mean?
mhm,
Again, like that's a sign of a really great character when it can cause you to have a visceral reaction. you know
mhm,
I'm like, he's hiding behind this illusion, and like he's a total charlatan, but like even as a charlatan, that's also his superpower. You know what I mean? Like, look at the world that
mhm,
he's built. Look how much power he has, right? Look what happens when you fall into the system. Look what happens when you can utilize propaganda, right?
mhm,
You get to make a choice here, I think is what Wicked is saying. Like, yeah, life could probably be a lot easier if you lie, cheat, steal, and whatever,
mhm,
right? Especially if you don't have any power and you're able to work a system. But is that right? You know what I mean?
mhm,
And I think Glinda she upset me a lot too, because I'm like, I know you're a bad person. You know what I mean? But
mhm,
I was like, just some of the choices and the envy, it rubs me the wrong way. Not literal, like not in a literature or movie entertainment purpose.
mhm,
It's really good. But I'm just talking about like if I'm thinking about how it affects me and my spirit and all that stuff. Yeah, she was a character that bothered me because you're taking credit that doesn't belong to you. You're really good at story and you utilize your image, which is fine. Utilize your image, but like it's not meant for good. Like that kind of stuff is like, eh.
Yeah.
But maybe because I envy that
Mm,
I don't have the
mm,
opportunity to wear a mask. I immediately when I walk into a place, I'm green. You know what I mean? So
mm.
maybe it's envy. That the reason why I don't like them. You know what I mean? That I just can't pretend. I'm not built like
Mm.
that. That's the autism. I think. I'm just not built like it. So I would say we talk about don't like. That would probably be those are the characters that really like I I bump with.
Yeah, let's rank these villains because I think at its heart, Wicked is showing you like, okay, y'all thought Alpha was the villain. No, there's this whole machine of oppression and disinformation and misinformation that is really in the wheelhouse of three characters. It's definitely the wizard, Madame Morble, and Glinda, who are like the top three, like actual villains, right? But in terms of who bothered me the least out of those three, I think Madame Marble is the worst. She's number one.
You don't like the way she
I
can't sing.
don't like the way she sings, but she's the one making all them posters, messing up the image of
Oh,
Alpha
like
to the max. She's the propaganda
she's
queen,
tornado. She did the whole
right?
thing. Yeah.
Yes, Katrina, all of it, right? So she's the number one villain that I hated the most in terms of like her villainy, right? And then also the singing chop.
That's so.
Then the next one, who is also just as bad, but still they tried to redeem her in the second movie, is Glinda. I think you're totally right because she, from the beginning, was always concerned about virtue signaling, right? Wanting to appear the most palatable, and at the end of the day, she really did the most damage. Like she's the whole one that made it so that Nessa died. Wasn't that her idea? And just the fact that she was willing to see like her teachers and her friends
Mhm.
get attacked and do nothing and actually for her benefit go along with the evil is just like
But
too
that's
much.
that's what
So
people do in our society for
yeah.
money, for
Hmm,
power,
hmm.
clout. It's they're willing to jeopardize their own morality. You know what I mean? If they have any left, you know what I mean? And it's to be popular, right? To be seen, to be forever remembered, but at what cost? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I feel like the lesson gets learned too late in the movie for me to be okay. You're redeemable. At a certain point, even though she starts to do the right thing, I just found her to be irredeemable.
Right. And I don't think that grimoire opened for her. Like me and my sister had, had this argument. It's like at the end of the second movie, when the book opens, who did it, right? There's some people, myself included, who think that it was Elphaba that opened the book as a sign to be like, hey, I'm still alive somewhere. My magic is in this universe. It's not completely lost. Whereas my sister thought that no, Galinda, she had to turn around. And since she actually became good, her power opened the book end to end. And I was like, nah, man.
I don't
I
think so.
don't think for me that's too cheap of a redemption arc. I don't think you could suddenly reap what you didn't sow. She been faking magic her whole life. Why would she suddenly get real magic
I don't think
in the
so.
end? Right after all this stuff. So for me, I'm like, no. But speaking of someone who's also faking their whole life, the wizard, right? He obviously is the king charlatan, but I like him the most out of the three villains because at least he was in on the joke and not high on himself. the way Glinda was, because again,
Mhm.
if Glinda had got her way, if she got what she wanted, she would never have looked back at
Mhm.
Elphaba. Right?
Mhm.
It's the humbling by Fiero and Elphaba taking her man that really caused her to come to Jesus. But she wasn't fit to come to Jesus. Even if Elphaba was crucified in front of her, if she was married to Fiero, she'd been like, "Oh, I'm sorry," you know. I don't think she would have turned her life around for anything. But the wizard, I definitely see him like this character called Buggy in One Piece. I don't know. Do you watch anime at all?
Um,
Have you heard of One Piece?
I know One Piece.
You
I
do?
don't,
Okay.
I have not watched it for 20 years, probably like you, or 30 years, however long it is. I've watched season one of like the live, and then I'll watch season two soon, and then I've watched a few seasons of like the animated.
Well, Buggy, he's in the live action and he's in the anime. This is a spoiler note, but basically, I see Buggy basically almost just like the wizard in the Wizard of Oz because Buggy fails up. He's devil fruit, the chop fruit. It's not that powerful, you know, and he's literally a clown, like or children's entertainer. I don't know if clown is like politically correct.
It
I
is.
don't know if he really entertains children, but he definitely has a whole clown nose and clown makeup and everything.
Mhm.
And he fails up. He basically gets a lot of power later on in the series, but there's more powerful pirates behind him in the crew that's like the real muscle, you know? But
Mhm.
he's very good at like the sleight of hand or like, you know, making the right speech at the right time, saying the right thing to
Mhm.
make people assume that he's powerful. And that's the same thing, you know, with the wizard because he I guess fakes read the grimoire whatever way, you know, made the people believe that he had power. And then he does use his invention because like Buggy does have a devil fruit as a chop fruit, but it's not like, you know, powerful or threatening. And the wizard, for all, you know, his lying and fooling the people, he actually does have scientific gifts. And you saw how, like,
Mhm.
you know, he makes the yellow brick road and he's doing all this technological stuff and even like his little fake talking head, scary voice booth.
He's
You
talented.
know,
Yeah.
he made that. Yeah, so he has talent. It's just not to the level that he has made the people believe that, you know, he could like really operate in is what makes him, you know,
But like, actually,
a
making me think
villain, you
about
know.
how
Mhm.
what had he not felt he had to put on airs, had he not felt he had to achieve power in the way that he
Mhm.
did, what good he could have done in this world. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm.
Self. You know what I mean? That I hadn't thought about that, but I
Mhm.
think that that's something that I think people should take away from the movie as well. It's like how important it is to be yourself and to
Mhm.
cultivate the talents and gifts that you have been given. You know, and
Mhm.
not necessarily seek to become something for others, or because you think that that's what other people that's going to get you some other thing. So like
Mhm.
an example would be like you do something because everybody else is doing it, or they see you as in this vision, and so you try to realize that vision. You know what I mean? That's the wrong way to go. Or when I'm creating something, or I'm talking to students, or I'm coaching them, I always tell them, don't write the thing that you think we want or that the audience wants. Write the thing that you want. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's a simple thing, but it's also a philosophy, I think, for your life. You don't have to be the president of the United States. You don't have to be CEO. Yeah, it's fine if you want to become that, if it's in,
Mhm.
right? But like, just because you have I have a degree in engineering, just because I can, do it, doesn't mean I should. You know what I mean? What I should be doing is what I'm doing. You take the harder road sometimes. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that out.
No, that's impressive. And actually that brings me to like the last thing I want to talk about, which is like life lessons from the movie and like, you know, takeaways, because we both have kids, so what do we want whoever's watching, especially the young and impressionable, who will pull out this classic, see it on Peacock where it's at right now. What would you hope that the kids glean from it? Because what you were saying, about using your gift, right?
Hmm.
And
I
being
mean,
yourself, all those things, they're powerful. But like I said, for your kids, what's like the main takeaways you would want them to get out of this
I
year?
have children who are
Mhm.
15, 12, no, 11, she's 11. Is she 11? I think, what year is this? 26, 11, and and 2.5, almost 3.
Mhm.
So each of them are at different stages of their development. But I do think that the oldest two, should take away the idea that you should critically think. You know,
Mm, mhm,
I think we're conditioned in our school system or just education system to accept a narrative as it's like the official narrative is what it is. But
mhm,
me, it's not crazy to question that narrative. Ask, by asking questions, by investigating yourself. It's not only just a good idea, it's necessary, especially today. So when I think of the biggest takeaway from this that I would want them to have, even the baby, I would say like we are in a time and a moment of history where criminals are running our you know country, and it's hard to trust the media. When you think about Bill Gates, he owns so many media outlets. Of course, they're only going to talk about good things that he or his organizations do, especially his foundation, even if they do bad things, right? Um, and I think it's so easy when we live in a situation like we are currently living in, where a regime there like we have can weaponize our public sentiment, right? That's why we have like what happened in January 6th, and like people who are supporting this foolishness. It's because of propaganda. It's because of a belief in stuff that's not even based on facts. And
mhm,
I think the wizard and all the people that work for him, like they were able to use public sentiment to attack the animals, and I think they were fabricating an enemy, Alphaba, right? Like we're gonna point our finger at the one that we know looks like a villain, you know what I mean? Because she's telling the truth, because she's a danger. You know what I mean? It's the same thing that's happened in, during the civil rights movement. Even now, when people are too truthful, they're going to end up dead. You know what I mean?
mm,
You know what I mean? And that's just what it is. But I think the bottom line is like, don't just consume media. Like, have some media literacy and intelligence, because we're in a dangerous time because of our society, and everybody wants things to be convenient and easy, and they'd rather just watch TV and not read and like analyze. And like, I think this could be a downfall, so that's what I would say, like, to my kids. It's like, be vigilant, ask questions, don't accept things. I mean, it's the same thing.
mm,
I got in trouble with this as a child of like very religious parents. I got in trouble for questioning things, the mythology of the Bible, and really understanding. Like I read the Bible still almost every day. It's not necessarily that I'm like, oh, all these things I need to replicate in my life, da da da, verbatim. No, like I have my own personal relationship with the Great Spirit. I know what's right and wrong. These are sometimes historical things. Sometimes it's just good philosophy, like Proverbs or something.
mm,
But like, if you don't understand the context, if you don't understand like the author or even the translator, and like why things were written in the way they are, you accept things in a dumb way, right? Instead of analyzing it and figuring out, how does this even apply to my life, right? What is it? What is spirituality? You know what I mean? But all that stems from being able to critically think. And, even in high school and stuff, when I started really questioning things, it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, but it ended me in a much better place because I look at things, I can see things much further than most others, and
Mm,
the literacy that I have when it comes, or the critical thinking I have when it comes to just all types of things that are fed to us.
amen. I think that's so powerful. And it brings me to this other lesson that I really hope that my 4-year-old son gets out of this movie and out of life is just the idea of make sure you are doing cost benefit analysis, but with a conscience, right?
Mhm.
With the morality, with uh knowledge that you will have to meet your maker.
Oh,
But at the end of the day, you got to keep yourself intact till you get to your maker as well. Because when we were talking about Glinda, I was thinking about okay, why is she in the middle? Even though she's probably the most trifling of all, because she knows Elphaba, like she knows these people. But I cannot put her at the bottom because that girl, at the end of the day, she had the best cost benefit analysis. She went the furthest
you need to do
because at the end of the
it.
day, exactly, she's like, listen, I'm not finna suffer. I was raised a certain way. My daddy raised me in the lap of luxury. My mama, she sent me all these nice clothes. I'm gonna keep my clothes. I'm gonna keep my way that I like to live. Yes, I'm gonna take my time to do right. At the end of the day. So she got to doing right, but she was doing cost benefits analysis, probably the best out of all the villains. And especially in these times, like I do not believe in dying on every hill, especially as people of color, especially again, like having a son
Mm,
who has to navigate these times. I want him and any like young and impressionable person watching, to really pick and choose their battles very carefully, right? But also, again, have that conscience, have a sense of, okay, can I sleep at night with,
yeah.
the choices that I make? And then, make sure that you don't wear yourself out thin for people that won't even spit on your fuse on fire. Because Alphaba, I feel like she was too loyal to Glinda at a certain point. Because I'm like, why are you still hugging this girl? Like, she killed your sister, all this stuff at the end. Like, I like For Good as a song, who can say if I've changed for the better? But at this point, after all that Glinda done, I feel like
Yeah.
you could forgive, but, you know, you gotta feed people the long spoon when they do too much. So again, cost benefit analysis, making sure you're not pouring your energy into places that don't deserve it
Hmm.
and places that will suck the life out of you. But
Or
also
people.
again, have that conscience. That's
Hmm.
what I hope, you know, my child people will take away. But
That's
yeah,
beautiful.
any other things you wanna say for we let the people know because it's 5:39. I know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you
Well,
got big things.
yeah. I gotta keep it tight shit. It is what
Yeah.
it is. You can find me on Instagram or TikTok at Ron McCants Jr. I offer sometimes like tips on writing or just things to think about. Sometimes I'm talking about the sun. It doesn't matter. And some things I'm working on. I'm really developing projects right now. Working on, like I said, a movie. And my short film is out. I would love for you guys to watch it. You can go to my website, Ronald McCants. Oh no, ronmccants.com, RONMCCANTS.com. You can purchase courses that are affordable. We're talking $10, $15 to learn, how to write a pilot, how to write a screenplay, that kind of thing, how to build a pitch deck. Or you can book one-on-one time with me, and you can look at the prices on my website. Or if you have a script, you need consultation, you need advice. I was the head of development. When I was at Blue Monday, we sold a number of shows. Three of them were greenlit by Amazon, and I was there for a very short, less than 2 years in that
Mm.
capacity. And I was able to do that. I know generally what I'm talking about, and I'm always excited to get new clients and help them reach their goal.
Amen. And I'm gonna put all that in the description box. I'll put the website and your at, for people, because I like Ron's TikTok, especially the ones about the sun. I'm like, the sun could do all this. Like, I know the sun could heal my my wife, my life. Like,
It
I
can
love
heal
your
your life.
videos. Like,
Yeah. You're like, what?
uh,
My blood is thick. All I have to do is go into the sun in my blood. Like, are you kidding me? People are crazy. I'm like, so
yeah.
am I. Like,
Yes, touch grass, people. All of us should be touching the grass every day, being in the
every
sun.
day, 20
Um, and yes, follow ronmccants.com, all of that. I will put it in the description box for sure. And I thank you so much, for joining us. Hopefully, you'll catch up on Severance. You're gonna link up and do that. And yes, for people watching, say how you felt about Wicked in the comments. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, you are the master of your fate and the captain of your soul. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. You are the best.